analysis, limited capacity, logistics to slow Chinese Bitcoin miners' global shift. China is continuing to move Bitcoin miners out of China, but it's taking longer than you might think, unplugging all those computers and moving them somewhere else to plug them in. Also, China continues to crack down on Bitcoin, taking down a company that was suspected of providing software services for virtual currency transactions. For years, China has signaled that it wants to ban Bitcoin. They could be looking to stem capital outflows via stablecoins and cryptocurrencies next, or it could be all part of their 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party. Be sure to give us a thumbs up down below if you're just starting to watch the show. Ben Ark, what's going on in China? Why is it taking so long to move the miners?
It's a lot of weight. Those things weigh a lot. You have to put them on boats. You have to ship them around the world. Like, they're not easy to move. And I imagine that those Bitcoin miners are dumping Bitcoin right now, trying to get their miners moved into, more friendly locations where they can start mining again. It's interesting that China are doing this, but I mean, they're not just banning it; they're banning it and copying it, aren't they? Which is the point. Like, they want to make their own digital currency, and that they're not happy that Bitcoin would compete with their own digital currency, which they're making. It will be interested if it continues to kind of like affect the Bitcoin ecosystem in China. So if they start attacking the manufacturers like Bitmain, I imagine they will, because for China they don't care. This is it's not even a record. It's a tiny part of their GDP, and if they want to ban something, they'll ban it, and that's fine. That mining will just move somewhere else, and the mining in China, as we said in other shows, it wasn't really sustainable, and it hasn't really been exploring the energy sources effectively. It's been using cheap coal energy, which is being subsidized by Chinese government. So it's not a bad thing that it's moving, but yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time. That's to be expected. It'd just be interesting now where these miners start popping up, where they're going to start mining Bitcoin, where they're going to set up shop. I know a lot of them are moving over to the US, and maybe with some of the promises of free and clean energy, but volcano energy in somewhere like El Salvador, maybe a few will pop up there, maybe a few will pop up in Iceland, and make use of all that geothermal limitless power which is there and running all the time. So yeah, hash rate will go up, but for now we're going to have a dip while these miners are relocating. And I think that China's just going to keep on attacking Bitcoin until it's out of their country, so they don't have any competition, and they can monopolize their digital currency and people using their digital currency.
They can go anywhere they want as long as it's not my house. I want to watch movies and read books in peace. Carter from Bitsby Trip, and your thoughts on China?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, they've been trying to break it for a while. And this was kind of a place that they could actually have a physical impact. They can show up to the various areas where it was being mined. They could see it on the grid as it started to scale up now to where it wasn't just a small power user. So now they had an idea of where these were at, and then put out that ultimatum to shut down, or BCs type of thing. And I think what we've seen so far is some of the faster moving, more organized shops out there in China have either liquidated some of their equipment, or they've tried to find some, partnership that was just out of China. And that's the stuff that we've seen move. When we look at where the Bitcoin hash rate has recovered so far, stuff is sitting in ports still. Some of it is getting deployed, but we still have a bit, I think, before we see it a full recovery. But I think the point is it will fully recover in some way. And if it isn't that, it's going to be in the next series of equipment that starts to come out. To Ben's point, I think on, what's the next sector that could be hit? It could be something like a Bitmain, one of the companies that are actually producing it. I've been looking to see if there's going to become a moratorium out there. Anybody that's doing any kind of pre-ordering of equipment, especially first batch stuff on some of the newer stuff, I would just take caution on it, that you are in a very agile, loose environment right now when it comes to regulatory in those countries that are probably most impacted from it. So investor capital and that sort of thing, I think, has a higher risk. I think a lot of the big companies that are buying that hardware either have some kind of understanding, or if it's at a port level understanding, or using a broker that understands the current regulatory environment there to keep them out of some of that risk. But America's, there's several countries in the EU right now that are like, hey, we're open for business, send them here. You can see, luckily in the States, it's 50 states. And even if the federal government comes out and puts some kind of restriction or I would say impediment, the states can follow it or they don't need to follow it, right? We've seen this with like mask mandates and stuff like that, where states ultimately will come back and say, hey, we have created legislation here. We've created, kind of grandfathered rules here. And you're going to see places like Texas and Washington continue to operate in some of these other states that see that competitive advantage that these states are getting from a revenue stream and new jobs and that sort of thing. Encourage more Bitcoin mining coming there. So outlook is still good. Nothing's shaken Bitcoin. I mean, contrary to some of the risk out there, I think if you do business in China, that's part of your risk right now. And it's always been part of your risk, right? I mean, it's a communist regime. At any point in time, we all knew that this could happen. It's just now finally happening. And the Bitcoin network signal to noise is showing us it's happening, because the network dropped close to 50% of its hash rate, 28% network adjusted difficulty, because it takes time for difficulty to adjust. But the numbers after the last adjustment here that just happened a few days ago was about 28.5%. On the network adjustment side, which just means folks that are mining here are making close to 30% more yield, even in a down market right now. So, it's unfortunate China's not seeing that. I mean, I feel bad because it's at a human level. People, they're trying to be part of this network and part of that environment. And anytime somebody comes and tells you you can't do that when you were doing it and you were an innovator and a leader, I mean, they had 60% of the hash rate. It sucks for them, but this is what it is. That's China. China's going to do what China wants to do.
It's amazing being in Bitcoin this long. You have all these kind of potential black swans where you say, okay, Mt. Gox is going to go down, BTC-E is going to go down. All these other services look really risky. And you say, wow, everyone's mining in China. How long is that going to go on? How long is this government that doesn't seem to like anything related to freedom or independence going to allow this free and independent coin to be mined in their country? And it's interesting to see this finally happen, but it's also, if you put on a list things that you think are going to happen in Bitcoin, like a country taking it or a country banning it. We've been talking about this for years. Another interesting idea, although I think it's a long one, a bit of a stretch. There's a lot of these new Bitcoin miners where they put them right into the container already. If only we could then plug those containers in on the container ships, get some kind of satellite internet. It gets a little far-fetched, but then we could mine at sea and they could never stop us from mining Bitcoin. So I'm sure technically it's a difficult sell, but if it's already in the container and you just need to plug it in, I think we could get it done. Dan, I heard some of those trucks backing up at your house. Carter, do you want to weigh in on my container ship mining first?
Oh, I was laughing. I was like, your power is probably going to be your biggest issue there. But yeah, I mean, it's not completely far-fetched. There's an entire concept of what they call off the grid mining, right? Where you're not grid tied in, right? And there's various reasons why you'd want to do that. And part of it is especially around if there's not legislative issues, but just the local area you're in are concerned that you're going to pull too much or you're going to be putting the resources at max. Not being tied into that system helps keep alleviating those kind of risk. But, having where you're competing and sending up to, Bitcoin Blockstream satellite, your only issue there is like you're starting the race condition with one hand behind your back because of the latency issue. And, when you find a block and you broadcast it, you want that to be hitting every node possible to make sure that you're not racing against somebody else and your work is orphaned. But, over time, maybe that's one for, ironically, we use Elon's Starlink for that, where we have faster latency at sea. Who knows? It's possible.